Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, inshallah, in today's session, we're going to pick up on Surah Abasa wa Tawalla. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulil Kareem. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa amma ba'd. فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عبس وتولى أن جاءه الأعمى وما يدريك لعله يزكى أو يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى أما من استغنى فأنت له تصدى وما عليك ألا يزكى وأما من جاءك يسعى وهو يخشى فأنت عنه تلهى كلا إنها تذكرة فمن شاء ذكره في صحف مكرمة مرفوعة مطهرة بأيدي سفرة كرام بررة سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. So Surah Abasa is the third surah in the Juz Amma, and it is 42 verses long, and this is considered to be a Makki surah. So the background of this surah was that an incident happened in Makkah at the time, in the initial time of Islam. So here basically, at this point in time, the Prophet ﷺ was giving dawah to people and inviting people to Islam, and not many people had accepted his message at that time. And those who had accepted were generally from amongst the poor and the weak people. So it just so happened that the Prophet ﷺ was able to actually gather the tribal chiefs of the various tribes in Makkah and was able to have an opportunity to present Islam to them and preach to them about the deen. So just to give you an idea of who these were, so some of the people were Utbah, the son of Abu Lahab, Umayyah bin Khalaf, Abu Jahl, and Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, who wasn't Muslim at that time. And another name that's been mentioned is Walid bin Mughira. These were big leaders in the community. They had a lot of influence, and the possibility was that if they accepted the message of Islam, then they could actually invite many others into Islam. The whole tribes would follow them. And obviously this was a major sort of a turning point, if that was to get them together and to actually give dawah to them. And they wouldn't normally give their time to listen to things like this, but here, alhamdulillah, Prophet ﷺ was to actually get an audience with them, and this was a perfect opportunity to actually present the message of Islam. So now, if you imagine the situation, Prophet ﷺ has this opportunity, and they were actually willing to listen to what he was going to say. So Prophet ﷺ was very happy that they're actually going to listen, and if they actually embrace Islam, then this is going to benefit us, as many people will come into Islam through them, and this will also be a face off against the oppressors who are trying to stamp out the light of Islam at that time, because now if you've got more people behind you, then there's more strength behind you in that sense. So there was benefit in preaching to them in terms of what the Prophet ﷺ felt was going to be beneficial. Then, so with that image in one side, where you've got the leaders, the cream of the society in front of the Prophet ﷺ on one hand, then you have a Sahabi that comes along. Now this Sahabi was called Abdullah bin Shur'i radiallahu anhu, or also more famously known as Abdullah bin Maktoum. The son Abdullah, the son of the mother of the blind one. So he was blind, and he had actually already embraced Islam. So he was a Sahabi at this point, and he wanted to ask the Prophet ﷺ a question. So you can imagine he's blind. He's trying to actually find his way around to see where the Prophet ﷺ is, and he's basically then eventually reaches the Prophet ﷺ. Now, being blind, of course, he can't see what's going on. So he doesn't know what the Prophet ﷺ is actually doing, or indeed who is in front of the Prophet ﷺ. Yani, he can't see all these leaders of the Quraysh or the tribes all sat there. So he actually goes up to the Prophet ﷺ and then sort of straight away asks him, Alimni ma amalaka Allah. Teach me what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught you. In other words, he wanted to learn from the Prophet ﷺ. He wanted to learn deen. He wanted to better himself, and he wanted to learn, obviously what Allah ta'ala has revealed. Now, the Prophet ﷺ didn't respond to his initial question, because at this point in time he was deep in a conversation with the hotshots of Makkah, so to speak. So now the Sahabi asks the question again, and again the Prophet ﷺ doesn't respond. So now he asks a third time, and this time the Prophet ﷺ's facial expression changed, because he was being disturbed. And obviously you can imagine, if you're deep in a conversation with some key individuals, then if somebody comes out of nowhere and just asks you a question that could easily be asked later on, then that might make you a bit annoyed or a bit frustrated. So this was perfectly kind of natural in that sense. But because he was being disturbed now, he kind of made a facial expression, or his face had changed. So he didn't say anything. Obviously the Prophet ﷺ, being who he was, he didn't want to hurt anybody or make anybody upset. So he didn't say anything. He just made this expression. And at the same time, Abdullah ibn Maktoum, the Sahabi, he couldn't see anything either. So he didn't know what was going on. Now, this is really interesting, because this was the cause, this incident there, the asking of the question to the Prophet ﷺ a few times, and then the reaction of the Prophet ﷺ, is what actually caused the initial ayats of this surah to be revealed. So Allah Ta'ala loved this Sahabi very much because of the talab he showed, the yearning that he showed, the desire to come and seek and better himself in terms of his deen. Allah Ta'ala loved that. So when someone has talab, has this desire and yearning, this is something that Allah Ta'ala likes. So obviously he sees this, Allah Ta'ala sees this in this Sahabi, and so he decided to then do the tarbiyah, the correction of the Prophet ﷺ right there and then, and these ayat then came down. So what is essentially Allah Ta'ala is telling the Prophet ﷺ is that the one who comes seeking knowledge is the one that should get the most priority from you. So because this Sahabi was already a Muslim and he wanted to improve himself in deen, he should have been given the priority rather than the cream of the crop of the Makkans and stuff, who weren't really that interested. They were just kind of sitting there to give audience to the Prophet ﷺ, but they didn't come there to actually embrace Islam or anything. They were just there to hear out what the Prophet ﷺ wanted to say. Now, the first few ayat that I read up to verse number 10, these ayats actually were quite scary for the Prophet ﷺ, because they are directly rebuking the Prophet ﷺ, if you use that phrase. And then the verse 11 comes along, and then Allah Ta'ala kind of puts some sakina back in the heart of the Prophet ﷺ through the words that he's used in this ayat. So we're going to go through this inshallah. So for the first 16 ayats of this surah, this is all about related to this specific incident. Now, ulama say that why was Allah Ta'ala correcting the Prophet ﷺ? And why was he given this tarbiyah, this correction straight away? And just over the fact that a blind man come to ask a question and not the leaders. Why was it wrong that he didn't address him? Now, if you look at it from the side of the Prophet ﷺ, he wasn't wrong either, because he was actually, in his mind, was that I've got an opportunity here to address some key figures in the community who, if they do embrace Islam, then this is going to have massive benefit to us. Whereas the Sahabi that come to ask questions, I could catch up with him later on and I can speak to him later on, etc. So that wasn't seemed as that critical. So there's a number of points that have been mentioned here by the ulama, which I'll just try and briefly mention just for our benefit. So the first is that the principle of our deen is that the majority benefit is better than one individual person benefiting. So if there's 20 people that can benefit by taking some advice and giving some nasiha to them, it's better to benefit those than, on the other hand, if you only have one person. So obviously this was one aspect to it. The answer from the other side of it is, we look at it from the Allah Ta'ala's perspective, is that certain benefit, guaranteed benefit, is going to be better than uncertain benefit. Now this Sahabi, the blind Sahabi, Abdullah ibn Mukhtum radhiyallahu anhu, he was already Muslim, and he wanted to actually benefit himself by learning some deen. So this was going to be a certain benefit. Whereas the leaders, they didn't have any sincerity, and possibly they were wasting just the time of the Prophet ﷺ, because they had no real intention to learn. So it was uncertain that even if they would accept Islam, let alone benefit many people. Another point that's been mentioned is that accepting Islam is better than just learning about Islam, because learning is going to raise a person in their rank, but accepting will actually take you out of hellfire, essentially, because you're no longer in the state of kufr. So it is more important to accept Islam than to just simply learn. And this is one of the points that's been mentioned, is that this is why we have different groups even in our own deen. So if you look around in the different groups within the Muslim community, you have some that go out and do dawah. There are others who go out and do tabligh. They go invite others, remind the other Muslims about Islam and everything. And then you have some that are the mashayikh, who basically work on the hearts of other people. They give them spiritual benefit, spiritual development, tazkiyah, and these type of things. And essentially they're all working for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're all working with the same goal, that bringing people closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in different ways, obviously. Now Allah ta'ala is basically taking the side of tazkiyah here, because you can have 100 Muslims, but if they're all sinful and committing sins, etc., then it's not going to benefit anybody. The community is not going to benefit if everybody is extremely sinful. Whereas on the other hand, if you have Muslims who have clean, purified hearts, this is going to benefit the community much, much more than just having people with the title of being Muslim but nothing else that goes with it. In fact, there is a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ mentions words to the effect that one scholar, an alim, is more stronger upon shaitan than 1,000 worshippers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching that ilm and tazkiyah are more important, and you have to work on quality, not quantity. So this was essentially the kind of crunch message that was being conveyed to these ayat. Now, the Mashaykh have given us kind of an analogy that we can kind of learn from in this context. So what they've said is that, you can have a dawah group, that go and talk to non-Muslims and teach them Islam, which is very good. Then you'd have a second group that is the bleak group, if you want to call it that teach Muslims about their basics of their deen, the fundamentals. And then you have a third group, which is the tazkiyah group, which is basically focusing on the spiritual development of a person. So one kind of analogy that's been given is, you have a person that cuts wood to make furniture. So this is like the equivalent of their dawah sort of group. Then you have this wood that's then been given to take shape make into a piece of furniture or something. This is the second group that's actually teaching the fundamentals. And then you need somebody who's going to actually polish this wood to make it into some fine furniture. In other words, beautify it, adorn it, decorate it, etc. So this is the third person, who is the group that's tazkiyah. So this is like the analogy from that perspective. Now, if the furniture, if you imagine, is not polished and beautified, who's going to buy it? The reality is nobody. If it doesn't look nice and it's not done up well, then no one's going to be interested. Obviously when you buy something that's made out of wood, it's got to be polished, it's got to be sand, all the blemishes need to be taken out, all the faults need to be removed, it's got to be varnished and upholstered to look really nice. This is the element of tazkiyah. This is what it does. So it gives you that final polishing and kind of essentially from a human perspective, it beautifies the person's character if it's done properly. But we all need all three groups though. So you need somebody who's going to gather the wood, and then you're going to have somebody's going to teach the fundamentals, and then you're going to have essentially the person who does the tazkiyah. Now, if there's no wood there, then how is anyone going to polish and make anything out of it? So, of course, all elements are needed, but there's just different groupings that we have, and this is the way the structure works. And it works as a team, in a sense. So, people do need to go out there, need to give dawah, need to bring Muslims, onto the deen, and then non-Muslims as well. And then people need to work at bringing, the faraid into people so that they understand their basics. And then you need the third group, which is the mashayikh, who need to then actually polish up and clean people's character and remove the diseases of the heart from them. Now, our deen in reality has three dimensions, and oftentimes we don't really hear about it or understand it well. So you have the Islam aspect, Iman aspect, and Ihsan aspect, and all three have to be there for a person to really be, that complete sort of human being, from that perspective. Obviously, this is a massive topic, so I'm not going to dwell into this piece of it. Inshallah, if Allah gives tawfiq, then we'll cover that at a future point. Then the third point that the Mashaykh mentioned is that from the etiquette side of things, Prophet ﷺ was teaching that it's rude to interrupt. So if you can imagine here, Prophet ﷺ was, in the heat of giving his dawah, etc., and then all of a sudden he gets interrupted, albeit by a blind Sahabi who couldn't actually see what was going on. Now, Allah's point is that, this person, because he's blind, he has an excuse. He doesn't know. How does he know that dawah is going on to an elite group of people in the community? So you can't really teach somebody who has an uzr, an excuse. So, he can't see what's going on. Now, another point that's mentioned is that the Prophet ﷺ changed his expression. Now, one of the things that the ulama write is that perhaps he changed his expression because he knew that the person is blind and he won't be able to see it, and therefore he's not going to be offended. That's a possible explanation. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's message was that the life of the Prophet ﷺ is an example for us. He sent a person with a great character. So that means that he has to be a role model for everybody. So in other words, what Allah Ta'ala is saying is that you shouldn't have made that expression even if the person is blind. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't be in a situation where you're showing your irritation on somebody because this is beyond your status. You're above this. You're a prophet, so there's a higher station to work at. So even when you look at it from this perspective, even from the Prophet ﷺ's side, there was justification for everything that he did. And this is why sometimes, we might see our teachers or leaders in the community maybe doing something, and we may not necessarily fully comprehend it, down to the fact that we don't really know exactly what's going on, or maybe we don't have that understanding of Sharia. Maybe they're doing something that Sharia has given them ijazah to do, but outwardly we can't see that, or we don't see that, and we might have a misconception. So we just need to be obviously mindful for ourselves that we're taking things in the right context. So now here basically we'll go through a few of the verses inshallah ta'ala, and then so the first verse basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Abasa wa tawalla, which basically means he changed his expression and turned away. So Abasa basically means to change a facial expression. Literally in Arabic it means to frown, but ulama say that out of adab we don't say that the Prophet ﷺ is frowning. In other words, we don't really say negative words attributed to the Prophet ﷺ. Then the next verse we say it's anja'ahul a'ma, that because the blind came to him, yani the Sahabi Abdullah ibn Maktoum came to the Prophet ﷺ. So now you can imagine how the Prophet ﷺ might be feeling when these ayat are being revealed, that all of a sudden Allah Ta'ala is actually addressing him directly and telling him his actions that he's done. So obviously that naturally would scare somebody, that oh my God, I'm being held to account here. So if you look at the wording just from an Arabic perspective, for those who study Arabic grammar, you'll notice that the sigha, or the verb tense, if you like, is being used as he, and it's not you. It's being told in the third person sense. But then in the next few verses, you'll see that the verb changes to directly to you, i.e. to the Prophet ﷺ. So verse number 3, Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ Zakka. Basically means, and what could make you know, hopefully, he would have achieved purity. Meaning, O Prophet ﷺ, how do you know that he could have attained the purification he was looking for by talking to you, getting advice from you, etc. Then Allah Ta'ala mentions, O yadhakkaru fatanfa'ahu dhikra, or would take advice and the advice would have benefited him. In other words, that at least the least benefit he would have gotten is that he would have taken some advice from you, and that would have been enough to benefit him for what he needed. Amma man istaghna. So as for the one who is free of need, meaning he does not care or is careless, this is referring to the audience that was listening to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the next verse, Allah Ta'ala says, فَأَنْتَ لَهُ تَصَدَّى, that you are going after him. Allah Ta'ala doesn't show them as a group. He says you're going after him. Each one of them, you're making an effort to go after them, and they don't really care. In other words, وَمَا عَلَيْكَ أَلَّا يَزَّكَّى, that it is not on you that he does not purify. That you're not responsible for those, the guys you're giving dawah to. If they don't accept Islam, that's not your responsibility. Your job is to go out there and present the deen. Guidance and giving guidance is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if they don't accept it, that's no onus on you regarding that. And then we'll just do one more verse and then we'll wrap up inshallah for today. So then the next one says, Allah Ta'ala says, وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى, regarding the one who came to you struggling. Yas'a, he struggled. He came to you with talab, with desire, with seeking to learn, and this yearning, expecting and hoping for something so eagerly. The Sahaba, if you imagine, radiyallahu majma'een, they were always eager to learn from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whatever opportunity would come, they would try and learn something. So now, obviously, you can imagine this Sahabi, he's come to learn and ask something, and he came with a lot of yearning to kind of come and benefit himself. And then on top of that, he was blind. So for him to come and find the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, takes a lot more effort than for somebody who has sight. They can see where they're going and very easily, quickly get to where they need to go. Whereas a blind man has to make a lot of effort in trying to find the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, navigate the streets, and get there. So this is essentially the meaning of this verse here. So inshallah we'll pause it here at verse number 18. Inshallah we'll pick it up tomorrow. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our coming here together to learn from the verses of the Quran. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to maximize our time in this blessed month of Ramadan. Requesting everyone for du'as as well, inshallah.